since we are already, according to the my clock at least, in the session, it might be good to start to get going with the topic of smart cities and AI. So let's do it so that I'll quickly go through the who's who in the panel and then set the scene, and then we start with the opening statements from you guys. First of all, I'm Jarmo Eskelinen. Nice to meet you all. From the University of Edinburgh. The funny accent and the name do come from Finland, though, so I led the City of Helsinki Smart City activities still 4 years back, and after which I've been involved in this scene in the UK. Now leading the data-driven innovation program at the University of Edinburgh, part of which would be to try to work with the City of Edinburgh to make them smart. Together with me in the session we have, unfortunately it seems, an all-male panel. Luckily the event as such has been pretty well balanced, but I do need to apologize for the fact that this session is not. And I'm not even making a joke about it. I don't think it's good, but that's just happened, and we reacted to it a bit too late. Should have caught it earlier than we did. Anyway, they are all very good males, though.
Does it mean that we're allies? It does.
So, with the invited panelists, we can start with the Leong from the Singapore Government Technology Agency. Then Stephen Lorimer from the Greater London Authority Smart City. What's the director of? Officer. I always get confused with these UK titles. I should know better after a few years already. Ben Cerveny, from the Foundation of Public Code, and then last but not least Ralf-Martin from Tallinn, brand new Smart City Center of Excellence. 1 month, not even 1 month old at this point of time, and we have had some delegates to join us. Kyriakos Perakakis from the Ministry of Digital Governance from Greece, and Karol Okonski from the Ministry of Digital Affairs from Poland. And just in time, Roland Slapoke from the External Smart City Advisor to the President of Latvia. And unfortunately, Emer Farrell, who would have saved us from being an all-male panel, had to step down, but she's present in spirit. Actually, she stayed in back row, but yeah. So, just a quick introductory point. I think the one thing which caught my ear this morning already was from Ben about the cycles of condensing cycles of innovation. I think that's very much the case which impacts this domain when we talk about smart cities and AI. It's debatable whether we have even smart cities yet. If we think about smart cities as cities which can manage data and systems in an integrated manner, we are in reality pretty far from that point in most cities internally, and as a market between cities externally. And now we would need to then introduce a new thing, which is AI, into this market landscape, which actually isn't working all that well without AI. But maybe the thing is that it could work with AI, that some of the challenges of city-to-city integration, data integration, old legacy systems, managing them, trying to build a smart cities market which is bigger than any one single city, because one city is not a market. Maybe we could crack quite a few of these things by using AI to make sense of tangled and mangled and incomplete data, which we are currently having in city systems, and which by and large has been one of the showstoppers for the smart cities movement until now, has been just a very poor quality of poor interoperability between data sources in our cities. So I like to study these sort of opportunities which integration gives to the cities as systems. Then I'd like us to touch also, because cities consist of people, we are the city, to not stay on the systems level but discuss what does smart cities, our AI-equipped smart cities, what would that mean for we as the people who live in cities? What kind of services, better opportunities to kind of live a sustainable and nice urban life could it give us? But then also touch the challenges which it raises, which are largely to do with the things of data ownership, data control, who owns you in a smart city? Do you own your own existence there, or does either the city government or corporation own it? And how could we do ethical AI-driven smart cities which tackle these issues or are conscious of them? Because probably doing data right in a smart city is more a question than an answer. There's things we need to balance against each other, and in the domain of AI, striking a balance between being innovative, regulating the systems, and having control of the data are not easy to meet in any single project. If you are drive towards innovation, you trample privacy and you trample regulation. If you do too rigid regulation, you stop development. And if you are too paranoid about privacy, you can't use any services. So I mean, there's this balance between the things we need to reach. And of course, everybody is happy to. This is a panel, so this is just my train of thought about the topics. Happy to hear, and I expect you to challenge these and come up with other topics as we get along. First, before I give the floor to the invited panelists, what we did agree in advance was, because Mr. Okonski, you need to run soon. Would you like to touch the topic from your point of view before I give the floor to the panelists, so that
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you for
set the
this.
scene.
I hope I have not spoiled your plan.
It's fine.
Of the structure of the meeting. So
The plan is fluffy anyway.
But still, having like a round table of some sort, I think, just lets to be maybe more dynamic. So in terms of AI, we, as Poland, to no surprise, we are also now working on our AI strategy, central AI strategy, being the documents under consultation right now. But what we have found, which is again not a surprise, I think, and definitely for you experts, is that actually the adoption of AI is definitely much higher now in local communities than actually in central level. And of course, the one explanation would be like a common sense, basically, that it's just easier to implement and to run a project on still smaller scale within one community than on the central level. But I think that this is, let's say, looking from a purely economical point of view. But I think what also is true is that because the communities, the municipalities actually are usually much closer to their citizens, they can actually react, I think, more adequately to their needs, and trying to combine both the cost saving, which I think is still the main factor for implementing the AI and generally for making the smart city, despite, let's say, the full notion of being as close as possible to the citizen.
You mean cost savings from a point of efficiency?
Yes. Yes, but still, there's trying to. I think cities are still trying to find some added value of using AI. So not just trying to find to balance both. And the examples that probably are very also common in other cities than elsewhere are, of course, the ones that are connected with let's say, the city infrastructure. So the smart water meters, smart street lighting are probably the ones that are very very common, and especially in the case of the smart street lighting, there is this additional feature of not only saving cost on, let's say, not having full power lighting in areas which is not necessary. It can actually, here you can actually also spot some elements where you can actually say that here the AI gives some extra value, saying that because of all the sensors and some analysis behind it, you can still adapt the light to be actually much stronger than you usually do it. So to have some additional means of maintaining the security in given places. And well, another applications are this the quite common in Poland, the smart parking, and of course the integrated system of public transport management, so intelligent transportation systems, to keep as much the flow of cars as smooth as possible, and also the something called smart flow, so the smart management of and detection of malfunction in water supply networks, in order to spot the problems as soon as possible, but to some extent also predict the problems with the very early symptoms that you can use. And so this is, let's say, that these are the examples, but I think that here it's even more true than in case of central government, that the cities still try and should actually copy the best practices from each other. And there's actually one project that I would like to mention that exactly has a structure like of the idea that there are still some leaders and the followers, and actually the leaders can experiment more, and the followers can actually also benefit from them and add their special touch to this. And there is a project now being financed from Horizon 2020 research funds called Ruggedized, where there are 3 cities, Rotterdam, Glasgow, and Ulmea is, let's say, the so-called lighthouse cities, so the ones, let's say, that give example, give some best practice. And there are 3 follower cities: Brno, Parma, and Gdańsk, being the third being the Polish city. So I think it's not actually, it's quite wise to admit to some extent that that there are some more advanced cities, but nevertheless try to link as much as possible to them and benefit from their best practice, but maybe also avoid the errors that they have committed when implementing a given solution, and then try to also look for some specific, doing what everyone's doing. Try to look for something specific for a given city, which you can make maybe based on its location, structure, population, and so on. So try to be still, as efficient as possible, looking at this cost factor, but at the same time, being cautious, what your citizens are actually expecting from you. Thank you.
It's quite a good overview of kind of a current state of affairs, and it's probably right observation that sort of different verticals are starting to create value, but connections between verticals are mostly missing, at least partially missing. So I ask the speakers to kind of give a short opening statement from their viewpoints, after which we kind of go to the opportunities, challenges dialogue, and maybe I just pick from the random order from the screen there. We can start with Ben, because he happens to be the left on the right, on the top. So
excellent.
Ben, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Okay.
I think I wanted to take a little bit of a step back because I always have I always want to problematize both the term smart city. I feel like artificial intelligence in a way is a very specific inheritor of smart city because I feel like both of them are terms that are over-applied and no one quite knows what they mean. So I think for the smart city, I've found it for a long time, it's sort of been almost a little bit of a watchword for an agenda around commercial products being inserted into municipal spaces, about sort of helping to bring cloud services into government and create an environment where there's sort of a licensing relationship and possibly some kind of data acquisition on the part of the commercial partner. And I think that now we find ourselves in a situation where a lot of municipalities have bought into that narrative and are now a little bit suddenly taking a step back and realizing that maybe they might have made some of choices that were a little bit not in their own interest. And so partially, this is what the foundation that I'm running is trying to sort of provide an alternative to, in the sense that we are looking to take code bases that cities have built for themselves or with local contractors in open source and turn those into products that other cities can use and build sort of what we consider something like an aspirational Linux foundation or Apache foundation for digital public infrastructure for municipalities. And this we're doing because we kind of have a couple of core beliefs. One is that policy and software are converging as software becomes an implementation of policy. It's incumbent on the municipalities and other administrations that govern the political part of that process to also govern the software creation part of the process, because if you, for instance, have a municipal election and something is decided like, oh, maybe parking on Sunday should be treated differently, and then you send that message to your software provider saying, oh, we need to make a change in the way that our managed parking services work, and the software provider says, oh, that's actually out of scope of our product. Then suddenly you have a divergence between the political process and the software implementation process of that policy. And that actually is that is out of scope for a democratic political body. So this is now something that I think that a lot of administrations at all levels of government are coming to understand, but it's really in the municipal context where the rubber meets the road in terms of the relationship of citizens with their government. And so a lot of these services, cloud services that are being extended, often are not considered as to what they're, how they need to be maintained by those cities. And then with, sort of on top of this issue, so what we're doing, I should say, is taking these products and, for instance, parking services systems and others that have been built by cities. We have a municipal decision-making tool from Barcelona, various other code bases that would be useful. This is another problem, is that a lot of municipalities are sort of have the same issues, and they are all starting these projects together. Either they're doing it through relationships with private contractors, or they're starting on projects on their own. And this is the whole point of platforms for collaboration, especially open source, is about this idea that you can have a collaboration that builds a product together. So this is the opportunity that we're trying to bring more participants to. Thank you. Then with artificial intelligence, I think on top of that is this sort of issue about the agency and decision-making process that we need to be very mindful of. This is I was talking about in our morning session as well, is that I think artificial intelligence is something that right now, I think as people, we tend to relate to the idea of artificial intelligence as something we expect to act like a human. When people talk about artificial intelligence, they sort of have this idea that it's this maybe either peer or maybe even somehow godlike, sort of entity that's going to make decisions on our behalf. And this, I think, is, fundamentally a very precarious position to find oneself in, again, in relation to the government. And so I think that this is something we need to be incredibly mindful of as we bring these processes into the process, into the relationship between citizens and our government, is that we don't frame the solutions as things that are coming from these sort of like mythological entities that have all the answers. So I think it's also important to recognize that the concept of intelligence is not sentience. But intelligence is actually a much broader issue than humans, right? Lots of species in the animal kingdom exhibit intelligence, and we as humans have had relationships with those animals for a long time. In animal husbandry, things like this, we have domesticated animals, right? And this is something where we have relationships with other sort of types of entities that sort of we use and work with and have an almost emotional circumstances with. And so I think it's important to realize that the way that we might relate to some of these sort of algorithmically provided services is not as like these bots that have some kind of avatar that shows up as some kind of avatar, some representation, humanoid representation of the city that's going to solve our problems, but instead like some kind of reaction that the city is having to a specific set of circumstances that it's experiencing, more like just a stimuli response loop that you'd find somewhere. And so I think this is maybe a better way to consider the level of complexity that we've already achieved in the kind of technical standpoint, and also maybe conceptually it's maybe a safer place to approach these kind of relations from, is thinking about it as this kind of more a broader definition of intelligence.
Somebody just last week in a conference which we had that what defines the future is what we build, not what we say. Of course, interesting that these things are coming kind of connected now. Let's move on to the other side of the planet, to Singapore. Singapore is widely seen as quite a driven city in the domain of smart cities. So how do you address these sort of challenges of integration and potentially ethics as well?
Yeah, I think I'll touch on our concept of smart cities, which is actually smart nation. We are a very small country, so we see ourselves as a city-state. Our vision is really looking at the value that the smart city brings to Singapore, and it's really about enabling our citizens to actually have a fulfilled life enabled by technology. So we are very solution-oriented. We want to apply technology to solve real problems that will make a difference to the lives of our citizens. So as part of our Smart Nation efforts, we have laid out plans in 3 areas: digital economy, digital government, and digital society. And this means that industry, businesses, and the government really come together and to step up our digitalization efforts and really work with our community and citizens so that they are digitally ready for this transformation. AI builds on this existing digitalization effort, and it's really the next bound for Smart Nation for us. We do see that there's significant potential for AI in terms of 3 broad areas. First is in terms of really developing data-driven policies and plans. Second is in terms of delivering anticipatory and personalized services. And third, in terms of optimizing operations. I'll touch on a couple of examples that we have done in Singapore. In terms of policy making and planning, what we have done is using topic modeling, which allows us to enhances our ground sensing ability by surfacing emerging trends and issues that may not have been quite so obvious. So we have done things like analyzing emails from our citizens who write in to our public sector agencies on various issues, and this allows us to really identify whether there's certain signals that we can pick up from the emails that we receive. And from the service delivery perspective, we use AI in terms of building a job search portal for Singaporean job seekers. So it's really about trying to help them match their skills and competencies with the jobs. And finally, in terms of operational efficiency, I think this is something that we, being a very, very small country and with a lot of very tight labor market, we are trying to see how we can optimize the use of our manpower. So we have been looking at predictive maintenance models for infrastructure. We have been looking at whether we can automate the routing of cases that we receive from the public for municipal issues. And one interesting use case that we have recently explored is really supporting our lifeguards in our swimming complexes, where we actually have computer vision drowning detection systems so that they help to complement the work of our lifeguards to spot distressed swimmers. Moving forward, I think we want to be able to continue developing our AI plans and very much focused on how we can develop and deploy AI in key sectors that will impact businesses and citizens. So I think for us, the use case is very important, and we see ourselves bringing together government, industry, and the research institutions to develop and deploy AI in order to address key national challenges. At the same time, the ecosystem is very important for us, and the enablers such as increasing AI talent and secure data sharing will also be priorities. Now, while we are very focused on the application of AI, of course, I think we also want to take a human-centric approach and in terms of AI governance. And in this regard, Singapore has developed a model framework which has two broad guiding principles in terms of explainability, transparency, and fairness, as well as human centricity. So these are the broad principles that guide our model AI governance framework. And finally, for us, Singapore is really interested in dialogue platforms like these, in partnering other governments and stakeholders in such conversations, in developing AI partnerships and really in partnerships that we can work together on. AI is indeed an emerging field, and it's something that we think that global collaborative efforts can really help us collectively navigate the uncertainties in AI and build synergy and trust among countries as well as citizens around the world. So really look forward to having further conversations with the rest of the delegates on this. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. That's a nice little bridge you're closing to the some of the collaborative efforts which are taking place. Maybe I move to Stephen next, because I mean, the London is doing one kind of a collaborative effort, because you are trying to make the London boroughs to work together, but you are also collaborating with cities abroad in the smart cities domain. So your take.
So thank you very much, and welcome to all of you. Yes, I know you can hear the American accent coming through, but be assured the mayor's open the talents from all over the world, and that is the message that he still has in these changing times in the UK, and he wants to make sure that everyone is aware of that. Just to take a step back on what we as London has decided to do on smart cities. And of course, one decision that we made is to send out the message that London is not one smart city, but 33 smart cities, because we have 33 independent local government boroughs that deliver their own services, collect taxes from the residents, and do all the interactions as independent local governments with their own mayors, with their own councils, but with the guiding hand of the mayor on strategy. And the strategy that we made for smart cities is called Smarter London Together, because we do have some services that we have that are quite flashy, such as transport. And so a lot of people recognize the smart technology and contactless payments inside of congestion charging of vehicles and environmental protection with the low emission zone, and the future kinds of testing even on drones, 5G and autonomous vehicles that are going on right now. But a lot of the work that goes on within boroughs and the councils is not glamorous. It's an unglamorous world of digital transformation where artificial intelligence tools are mostly very, very humble. They're about integrating systems, about redesigning digital interfaces and websites, and they're consolidating the digital exhaust of the residents into something that is comprehensible, and protects their privacy and security. And that's why we stress citizen-led design in everything that we do, and innovating even in community giving and procurement with future tools. Because we have in the past been developing crowdfunding tools, we've been developing digital engagement platforms, and we've been tackling challenges through really major changes that we have in data sharing. And data sharing, a lot of it is that enables artificial intelligence, because we have 33 boroughs times 500 services equals tens of thousands of different data sets that are held within London and local government. So if you can scale those kinds of solutions in London, you can scale it anywhere in the world, because it is so complex. But you can't build AI on legacy systems. And mobilizing the data for the benefit of citizens is quite important for air quality. We've been developing a partnership with the Turing Institute, for instance, to try to integrate lots of low-quality sensors on top of the high-quality ones that cost tens of thousands of pounds for our housing crisis and for the crisis on our high streets and businesses. For example, we've been putting artificial intelligence tools in the hands of the retail and hospitality sector, because they're the ones that are really under threat by the economic forces which are causing retail shops and high streets and places that we depend on for the liveliness of the city to start to be affected. And that's one reason why we started piloting data trusts for the Internet of Things, because as the cost of Internet of Things goes down, the amount of data produced them go up, that you can actually start to build these tools. But they're one of the most insecure kind of devices that are being built right now. The maintenance plans are not very good, and the providers are always changing in the way that they deliver city services. And one thing that we wanted to look at through Data Trust is how do we actually make sure that the data that's being held and then being supplied to those who want to build new digital tools built on artificial intelligence, how we do that for the benefit of citizens. And their benefit might be privacy, it might be their security, it might be their happiness, the quality of life in their home, or it might be their economic ability to exploit the data economically. And that balance between them is very important. And that's why we've been developing a new London data store to be able to handle live API data, not just have like upload every month as a new data set comes through. And thankfully, with the assistance of Horizon 2020 program that we called Sharing Cities, that we have a partnership with Lisbon, Milan, Warsaw, Burgas in Bulgaria, and it's one of the Lighthouse programs that was discussed by Carol over there. And it's why we've been developing a digital talent program to make sure that the diversity of entrepreneurs is more equitable, more diverse, because it can't keep going where AI tools are built by people that look and sound like me. I'm the archetypical middle-aged American white man building all the tools. And yeah, I can't have just me doing this all the time. And it's why we've been building collaboration between the boroughs and a new London Office of Technology Innovation, which is funded by the mayor and 15 boroughs as a volunteer organization to test best practice, to test data sharing agreements, to test how people can share the places that they work, to share plans for apprentices, to be a more diverse workforce in the technology sector. And it's why we've signed an agreement with other European capitals, with Bloomberg Associates. I think Helsinki and Bratislava and Athens are part of the signatures that actually started to share our experience in AI. And that's why in a part of our statement, we talked about the current adoption, the application, and our approach that we want to do in the future. And so ideas of adoption are in chatbots and housing repairs and transport testing. And of course, like there's something that the mayor has been very concerned about around facial recognition, because he wrote a letter to different private developers that are using facial recognition to alert security guards that they should go and follow people. Because these data, and for them to offer to the police, these are the suspect people that we've seen going around. Would you like this data? And so the mayor has been very concerned about this and how it's being used, and that discussion is ongoing very quickly. And in the application of that, we want advanced data from many sources to solve these complex problems, and we do see that it's, as it was said before, cities, not central government, are really at the forefront of where these are tested, because that's where the questions are first asked. It's where the technology is first deployed. And too often right now, there's lots of negative examples in national government because it's focused so much on tax and fraud and benefit payments, and those ones are about kind of catching people that are doing wrong instead of helping people that are in need. And that's what cities do, and that's what local government do. And so to finish of the future approaches that we say that we want to do, is we built a coalition of cities to have a good approach around AI, to have accountability, so people can't build black boxes and hide behind automated decisions and hide behind to escape scrutiny, especially scrutiny around bias in the data that's going in. The second one around privacy, to have anonymity being a choice that's available to you, but also knowing that getting those who are vulnerable getting data in the hands of who can build better services is an advantage to you. So it is that kind of knowledge that if you opt out of sharing your data, that's something which might affect the ability to build services towards you, especially those who are in vulnerable groups. And how do we negotiate that kind of discussion in the future? And also how you design AI in a civic setting, and that's something which that whole concept of how you do that is something which needs to be explored in the future. That it's something that's not in a private sector setting, but it's something that's in the city for all of us, around all of us, even if it is for different groups. And that's why, for example, and just to finish off, is that in training and testing, that these populations need to be representative. That's something which should be required, should be put into contractual language. But how you do that is something that requires a much better skill base and capacity of those who are working in the public sector. So with instruments such as LATI, we're trying to build that kind of capacity where when we were split as 33 boroughs, we didn't have that capacity because it was just spread too thin. People didn't know each other, didn't know best practice.
Very good, thank you. Picking up themes which are becoming common between this AI and inclusion, this sort of power of the cities in this domain over national governments. Funny enough, on this session, who could have guessed? I do agree, though. And then also this I think the important point of data ownership and data management and development of the systems driven by the civics processes and not just corporate interests. So last but not least, another collaborative effort which is developing between the twin cities of Helsinki and Tallinn, finest twins Smart City Center of Excellence. And you're a founding director, Ralf-Martin. Of course, it's all just, dance and roses to you at the moment because you are like 1 month in the project. But what are you going to do?
First of all, I'm very grateful that I'm the last one, that I can actually draw up on some of the points already made. I think to start with, I really much like also coming from more like conceptual setting called university. I really liked what Jarmo and Ben already started with questioning what is it actually what we're talking about. AI in smart cities can be something very specific, or it can be actually everything. So it's two very, very broad concepts, and sometimes it really needs to be asked that is it AI we're talking about, is it smart cities we're talking about, or is it just intelligence in cities what we're talking about? And sometimes it's actually easier to broaden it up to maybe like intelligence in cities. And if we come to this core question that do cities need AI, then obviously the answer is depends on the situation. Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no, and sometimes it's maybe. And actually more often it's no than yes, because as said that very often this intelligence itself solves the puzzle. So very often when cities are becoming in the trouble that we do not know how to solve it, they think that they turn to AI, and when AI solves it. But actually, when as Stephen mentioned as well, that most of AI tools are very humble and very specific. So sometimes the societal expectation is so big for AI that we are looking towards something like revolutionary. But actually, the revolution is step by step and very small. Just like a very small side story when I'm looking at Stephen as well, that at some point Greater London Authority had very ambitious plan regarding blockchain as well, and at some point you understand that some technologies are very revolutionary by design, and then at some point you think that you can do step by step innovation as well. But when coming back to Estonia and Finnish level, and I think everybody's interested to know as well what's going on here in the level of AI friendliness of cities, so to say, but how here and actually this is scalable as well, but how cities can be AI friendly, so to say, and I think this comes to like 4 points. First point is that how effectively cities actually block AI in their environment. This is something from the impact side, as was mentioned several times, that cities are the one who actually implement AI, and countries are more like strategy setting, but cities are actually doing everyday pilots. And here we see that some cities are more effective in blocking it than other ones. And here, I think in Estonia and also Finland side, we are actually quite strong in not blocking AI. But one very funny example maybe is that currently we have this robot bus in operation in the eastern part of Tallinn, and that's being operated by one company based in Copenhagen. And we also have similar operations in 4 other cities in Finland, Norway, and Sweden. But we still don't have any operation in Copenhagen, although we are still opening it up. And actually that was a funny thing, because even our agreement was that we will send our operators to be trained in Copenhagen. But at some point they were shipped to Helsinki because there is no operation, and Copenhagen has been just so resistant to this innovation very effectively. In Tallinn's case, when coming to the western part of Tallinn, in the university campus area, where very many of you were yesterday as well, we are actually very friendly to new innovation, but actually you can even you can order pizza and groceries with a delivery robot, and there is no human operator walking behind anymore. So it's innovation-wise, it's pretty much the farthest you can go in terms of those delivery robots. It's very, very, very huge impact. On the other hand, the second point, how cities can become more AI, or how we can enable more AI in the environment, is that how cities themselves invest into AI. Cities have huge budgets, governments in general are the biggest budget owners, and the question is what the local governments do themselves with the resources they have. And here we see that especially in the Tallinn area and in Estonia, it still is problematic, but we are very hardly coming out from this price-based competition rules and procurement for price and everything related to innovation procurement and taking on new technologies using the city own funding. It's very, very problematic. In one pilot, what we actually did was that we transferred all the money that City of Tallinn had to City of Helsinki. And City of Helsinki ran the pilot on behalf of City of Tallinn, because that was the most effective way. Otherwise, because in other cases that we have not done it, we have actually failed several times with this innovation procurement. It's very, very challenging. And now, maybe when coming back to the morning discussion on the bigger stage as well, where there was this question on the air that to what extent AI technology should be explainable. And I think that on the city level, explainability should be too extreme, so to say, that most services and solutions offered should be intuitively understandable. Otherwise, like if you go to Amazon and you don't understand how exactly the book is being offered to you, new one based on AI, this is one story. But once AI is already getting there in Estonia, that kindergarten places, for example, are being allocated using the AI, or at some point probably also like elderly house places are being allocated when people really know to understand how exactly this works. Otherwise, they just do not have any impact because people do not start trusting it. So this is at least in the case of city level, it's key. And then I very much like everything related to building the smart city market as well, which is one of the key points of this smart city center of excellence we're setting up. And the positive side coming from Estonia side is that at least like city to city data interoperability wise, we are in a very good situation thanks to this X-Road platform, but compared to London having 33 boroughs with limited flow of data, when in the case of Estonia, all the cities, city governments, they have very good exchange of data with each other. But on our yes, it's unique. But on the other hand, if you look into some like common services, when after like just very like basic ones, there are like 1 million cars driving from Tallinn to Helsinki every year, and that was actually 6 years ago when we met first time with Jarmo, and discovered that there's like a huge market failure in the field of parking, that you cannot use mobile parking coming from Finland in Tallinn and in Tartu and other cities as well. Then it took like 5 years to solve it, although it's actually technologically very simple fix. And so people coming from abroad that didn't have Estonian SIM card, which is technically couldn't park. And this is just one example, but on our hand we're getting very open, and we're talking about joint market, but we have those like small barriers everywhere. And the last point what I wanted to make is that if you're talking about AI technologies in general, when we have one quite big systematic or ethical error in our talks, in a way that, and this is like everywhere you go into the technology side as well, that AI by default is designed to follow rules. This is like how it's designed, and it's unethical to design it not to follow the rules. But in this AI part, or intelligence, or people, they are actually designed to break the rules, and they are actually designed to rewrite the rules as well. And when you put a robot into this environment, that humans themselves are all the time breaking the rules or rewriting the rules, and then this AI is the only one who follows the rules, then you have two options. That first of all, you limit human creativity to break the rules as far as possible, or when our thing is that you just have to put those robots into very like closed environments, but you cannot put it together with humans because it just doesn't work out that well.
Lots of ground to cover here in 15 minutes we have. Roland, would you like to maybe I open the floor to questions and discussion now. Do you have insights you want to touch based on the what you've heard here?
Well, I heard a lot today, and then yesterday it was we talk about the revolution of artificial intelligence, and it reminds me of the painter Salvatore Dali, who said that the Russian Revolution was the French Revolution, which came late because of the cold weather. So artificial intelligence is in Latvia. It's not that quick as in Tallinn, but I noticed it that at the self-government level it was working, because in June I had a meeting in Jurmala, and there is a toll when you go in there, but I had forgotten. I had not been there for 4 years. I didn't pay the toll, and a month later I received, I had a fine. So you have to come on the 7th of August at 9:15 and you have to pay. I went, I paid. I had the half price because I don't have lots of fines. But I was interested. I asked the policeman, "Oh, what is it?" Well, it's artificial intelligence after all. They are actually making a photograph of every car coming into Jurmala. And what happens? In the past, there was those, you were paying and there were two policemen trying to stop somebody who had not paid. But now it's not useful anymore. At midnight, everybody has been filmed. And so they have about 300 people a day that have to pay a fine. But you are talking about the non-obedient people. We have some in Latvia, and they were like, you know, we come from a totalitarian regime, a repressive regime, so we don't like to pay everything. And if we can do something that is not according to the state rules, we feel ethically correct and intelligent. So some people come with 30 fines because they used not to pay, and it was all right, but now they have to pay. And so what does it mean? The city is saving on work hours of the policemen. They are doing more intelligent things, and they actually have their tax incoming increasing. So I learned that artificial intelligence has come to the Latvian municipalities. I was appointed a month later in my position, so I was not well informed. Now I know that there are other cases. In principle, in Latvia, we'd like, there was your discussion, Ben, this morning was fascinating because you had a professor, a specialist in quantum physics, and you had the fantastic person working for NGOs, and you had really the whole sides of the truth, and that's what we are talking about. So this is what we're dealing with in Latvia. We're trying to have a unified system so that everybody in Latvia is going onto one platform to have all kinds of state and municipality services, which is fine, but still you keep the human touch. And we have one network you would not suspect. We have had 800 libraries left in Latvia, which are a social center. People come because there is an internet point. And so the one plan is actually to have also one person helping the others, not being aware of all technicalities of internet, to do what they have to do on the internet. But answering to part of what has been done, we have a good example, Jelgava in Latvia, a city of about 70,000 inhabitants, so nothing to do with London. We don't have your problems, you know. And I don't like London for that. It's too big a city. In 1 hour, I am next to my river and I feel well in the countryside. They have developed, working with Austrian, smart city monitoring, and it is really, they have developed functionalities according to what is needed. So some things are totally, maybe you wouldn't suspect it, but the classical things, transport, of course, to have a better schedule, so you can follow the schedule of the buses on an application. You have the smart lighting. You have for security, one of the first part of this was actually civil defense, I would say, in cases of crisis, even if they don't happen very often. But their cameras were put, and it helped also for the children going to school. But one very interesting thing that is typical, that would be for Finland and Estonia, we have something called the black ice. It comes and suddenly the whole city is like, in German say glatt ice. It's like a mirror. And so we have some detection, preventive detection of it. 2 hours before, we have sensors on the street. They are detecting changes, and they say in 2 hours there will be this black ice. So there is some checking, and within 1 hour, there they've put salt on the street exactly where it's needed, not everywhere like we used to have. So there is saving of a lot of things. We don't, all drivers, car drivers don't like salt. So this is a very efficient thing. But there is one aspect that I would like to mention. There is an application of the city. It's called My City, How Do You Feel? And it gives the possibility to the citizen to say, you know, here there is a bump on this street. And then there is, you can follow whether the public servants are reacting. Well, the result is what we are talking about, these human aspects of life in the city or in the state. And talking to the leaders of this city, you understand that what it is about a change of mentality. You look at what you can better, so that's what you were trying to do. You listen to the people suggesting what they need, and the result is actually an increase of loyalty to the city. This is citizenship working. So after, 30 years ago, we had a totalitarian regime. It is a whole progress, working at the level of the municipality in order to have people feeling belonging, a sense of belonging to the city. They participate, therefore it is good. So I think this could be, and that will be my last sentence, this would be a way to convince politicians if they want to be re-elected. You remember Jean-Claude Juncker said, we all know what we have to do, but we don't know how to be re-elected after we've done that. Well, here this mayor is mayor in the city more than 20 years, and he, for about 7 to 10 years, has been into smart technologies, and obviously he does not regret it. Thank you.
Important point, the loyalty increase here. We are almost out of time, I am afraid. We might have a time of a couple of short questions. Very good.
Thank you. I was prepared to shout, but this is better. I have an analog question that perhaps goes to Mr. Leong and Mr. Lorimer and Mr. Soe. We talk about smart cities, artificial intelligence, and specifically data. What I'm interested in relation to cities here is, do your examples have any plans on where the data is stored? Specifically thinking about data centers. And the second question is related to data centers. When I hear more data and artificial intelligence, I start thinking about energy. So how are these questions then integrated to some of the considerations you have when thinking about planning for the future city where data is much more integrated and, more importantly, produced at exponential scale? Thank you.
So for the question on where does the data go? For us in Singapore, I think because we are a very small place, basically in terms of a lot of the sensors that are deployed for public use, it's actually deployed by the public by the government. And these are government agencies, for example, who will deploy sensors for example, in terms of your water metering, in terms of temperature sensors, environmental sensors, and so on. So for this kind of sensor data, it's the government is because we deployed the sensor, the government is the owner of the data. And naturally, all governments need to basically have that trust relationship with our citizens. And in that regard, we do have legislative safeguards for the data. We also take great care in terms of the data security measures to make sure that only the people with the right authorization are able to handle the data. So it's a difficult trade-off. I think it's one where I think all governments are grappling with in terms of, yes, you do need the data to be able to deliver value to your citizens, but also the safeguards are also quite challenging because, as all of us know, it's a small little mistake can create a huge problem if there are leaks and so on. So that's for the Singapore context, because a lot of the public services are delivered directly by the public sector. So that's why we own the data. The question on data centers, I'm sorry, I'm not able to quite answer that. Not very familiar with that issue, so maybe I can pass the question on to my colleagues here.
What we do in the heat and energy? Well, I mean, just picking on the data centers part of it, we used to have a physical data center that the city ran in conjunction with Transport for London, but with the move to the cloud, it got decommissioned. So we had a separate data center that was using loads of energy just for the data from Transport for London, and we used an Oracle platform to upload all the data from the entire system every day at midnight. And it was a huge time lag. You couldn't build live services off of it. You had to move to providers that could provide in the cloud in their own data centers in conjunction with the laws that we have in the UK and the EU for safe harbor of data. And so I can't speak for Transport for London because they're the commissioners of that data center, but they probably would tell you that they've had a very positive environmental impact by moving from just having their own data center to one to the cloud. But that's something I can take back and ask them that question in the future.
I think at least in case of old hometown Finland, Helsinki, they use the excess heat pretty efficiently for district heating and cooling systems. How about Tallinn? Is that happening here?
I think in general here the city own data is being very distributed throughout the municipal offices. So each office, each department is responsible for their own data storage, and then there is this platform that how it's being exchanged. When it comes to bigger databases, usually it's outsourced to companies like Oracle or whichever, but it's very distributed, so there is no one huge database of city, but it's just department by department, and everybody has their own agreements, and then just the question is how this data is being exchanged.
Very good. We are out of time, I'm afraid. Ben, you've been silent for a while. Do you want to kind of close the session?
Sure, thanks. I think all of this is really super compelling because there are multiple examples on the ground of what people are doing with these technologies, and I think it's actually really heartening to see that these sort of advances are being made in specific use cases. I guess coming back to some of the points I was stressing earlier in the plenary session is that cities are this incredibly long continuous process that humans have created. I mean, cities are one of the kind of real artifacts, literally, of our own process of civilization, and as a crucible for a lot of these questions to be worked out, cities are they have done the work of changing technology into infrastructure over and over again. And so now we're at this moment where we're starting to see how, AI and the things that we call AI, which are mostly sort of intelligent and adaptive systems, are kind of plugging into our original intelligent and adaptive system, which is the city itself. And this is the thing that I find so kind of profound about this moment is that we're starting the city is an incredibly complex system, and it actually it serves kind of as a reference implementation to the set of problems that we're dealing with in culture on all sides right now, which is our ability to understand and tend to the complex systems, whether they're the climate or our own health or society or all of these issues. And so the kind of, how citizens can read the city in a way, this question about the explainability of AI, potentially the city is a way to work that out as well, because if people can kind of understand how these kind of intelligent decisions are being made on their behalf in the environment that they're most familiar with, then they can sort of project their understanding of how AI operates into other domains that are less kind of directly accessible. So the smart city, in a way, or at least AI, how it affects this kind of the city and the citizens' role in it, or their perceived understanding of its operation on their behalf, is also potentially a way to sort of use that as a framing for AI's function, kind of in a variety of domains.
So in a nutshell, cities seem to be one of the best ways we currently have to kind of develop explainable, understandable, ethical AI solutions which serve the needs of the people. But if I heard you right, we need to join forces between cities in order to make that happen, because not one city can do it alone. So on that note, our time is out. Thanks for the panelists. You kind of blew my plan for the panel, but it's fine because it was all very solid stuff. And thanks for the audience.